Is there a place in time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Makeshift Stories presents episode 327, Virtue Deprecated, read by Vern Hume. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, friendship might get sacrificed for money, fame, and power. Rani and Arjun leaned on the transparent railing, watching an armed patrol boat slowly weave between super yachts like a sheepdog guarding a flock. Rani yawned and rubbed his eyes. The private jet they had shared with a tech billionaire and his family had taken 14 hours to get from Bengaluru to the airstrip on the private, independent island of Waiheke. Despite the 7-hour time difference, his body still insisted it was early morning, not late afternoon. He noticed the billionaire who had shared their flight yawning. Even the ultra-rich could not buy their way out of circadian rhythms, Rani thought. He had never seen so much wealth gathered in one spot. "I'm still not sure about this," he said, watching a group detach from a swarm of celebrities and head toward them. "We were invited," Arjun reminded him. "They want to hear about the interface. That's why we're here, to promote the new tech and get funding to develop it." His gaze drifted to Rani's legs. "I get that being the product demo isn't your favorite role, but honestly, you make the case better than any pitch. Let's hope it speaks for more than just me. You promised the next version would be affordable enough for local clinics to use." "Jet-lagged?" asked a fit middle-aged man with an expensively styled haircut, manicured nails, and piano-key teeth. A woman at the head of a small retinue of assistants handed him a tablet. He glanced at the screen, then arranged his face into a radiant smile and held out his hand. "Arjun Patel, the inventor of a revolutionary neurointerface. I'm Gerard Wilson, your host. I make a point of personally greeting all my guests." Arjun took the offered hand and shook. "Thank you for inviting us." "Arjun, I think you'll find the next few days very stimulating." He turned to Rani. "And you are the original proof of concept? Let me see you walk." "He's not a proof of concept. He's my friend and the first person to benefit from the technology," Arjun corrected. Rani gave Arjun a small nod. "It's okay. I don't mind demonstrating." He took a few steps. "So natural, no wires. That's amazing, Arjun. Where are the electrodes?" "No electrodes. There are transceivers built into Rani's cap. They read the electrical activity associated with motor control and transmit interpreted signals to a receiver implanted below the damaged section of his spine. The transceivers could be incorporated into other headwear or implanted, but implantation would make hardware updates difficult. We were both 10 when an autocab hit him. We grew up together, so I saw how difficult it was for him to navigate the world, especially in the poorer areas of—" "Excuse me," Wilson interrupted as the woman whispered something in his ear. He nodded and took Arjun by the arm. "Let me introduce you to some of the other guests." The billionaire and the woman steered Arjun toward a group of men standing around a bar. The remaining assistants closed around Rani and guided him towards an Olympic-sized infinity pool where casually attired guests lounged under umbrellas. Dark-suited security stood like palace guards, watching the guests and the adjacent hills. As Rani neared one, she put her hand to one ear, shook her head, then pulled out her earbud. It happened again when Rani walked past a muscular man guarding a gate. 2 plainclothes guards materialized from nowhere, one carrying some kind of scanner. They made a beeline for Rani and began waving the device around him. "I need to see under your cap, sir," the guard with the scanner demanded, reaching for Rani's head. "No." Rani stepped back. "This is not a request. There is something under your cap," she insisted, reaching for it. Rani clamped both hands over his head. 2 other guards tried to pull them away. A few guests turned to see what the commotion was. Rani broke away and ran toward the bar where Arjun was talking to a group of investors with Wilson. "Arjun," he yelled, "they're trying to take my interface." Wilson scowled and turned. "What's the problem?" "He's got something under his cap, sir. It's interfering with our comms." "So? Wilson demanded. "It's a security risk, sir." "Radio interference?" The woman nodded. Wilson looked at Arjun. "Your transceivers?" "Let me see that scanner." Arjun took the device from the woman and scrutinized its screen. "The problem isn't the transceivers. Your security system is flooding all the commercial bands. On this island, we restrict access to the electromagnetic spectrum." A large man in a black t-shirt, dark trousers, and sunglasses took the scanner from Arjun. "Mason Rappa, head of security. We reserve a few bands for our guests' mobile phones, but that's it. Even those are heavily monitored." Wilson gestured for the guards to let Rani go. "Why don't you take your friend over to those investors while I discuss this with Mason? I'm sure they'd like to see your system in action." Rani allowed Arjun to guide him toward the bar, his eyes lingering on Wilson. The exchange was brief, marked by a silent nod and a glance that flickered their way. Rani turned away. At the bar, a cluster of men watched their approach. He figured they must be the investors. One of them gestured toward his legs. "This is my friend Rani," Arjun explained. "Impressive. And this is your prototype?" the man asked. "Not a prototype in the usual sense. Each system is tailored to its user and can be updated through software. Although Rani's hardware was the first system deployed, it runs the latest code. I design every update to be backward compatible." "So, when you say tailored, the hardware is standard, but the software customizes it for each user," another man confirmed. "Yes, that's more or less correct." "Then you've left the door open for a subscription model. That's more robust than relying on hardware sales." There were nods of agreement in the group. "Arjun, I need to talk to you and your friend for a moment. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse us." Wilson steered them away from the bar. "I need to ensure the safety of all my guests. One reason people enjoy my little retreats is that I provide top-notch security. I hire the best, and they're telling me your wireless interface poses a risk. I'm so sorry about this, and I completely understand that it is a massive inconvenience for Rani, but unfortunately, it will need to be turned off." "I won't," Rani blurted. Arjun put an arm around his friend's shoulder. "What Rani means is that without the interface, he can't walk. I appreciate the difficulty. My head of security assures me he can have a wheelchair here within 15 minutes. The best money can buy, and it's already on the way. I overheard your comment about updates. Could you retune your transceivers to one of the cell phone bands security allows?" "No, but—" Arjun snapped his fingers. "We still have the wired harness, used for testing back in the Bengaluru office." "Great. Then we have a solution." Wilson smiled warmly and waved his lead assistant over. "Ms. Cowrie will get the details from you and take care of getting the harness here. She'll also assign an aide to help Rani. Security will allow you to demo the interface for the biotech group by the bar until the wheelchair gets here." Rani held Arjun's gaze. "It took me years to stop thinking of myself as trapped in a chair. Now I'm supposed to go back to one?" Arjun glanced back at the bar. "They'll have to wait. I want to stay with Rani until this is resolved. Is there a place to stay outside the hotel?" An aide whispered something in Wilson's ear. He nodded. "This conference center is the only place with rooms on the island. The rest are private estates. It would be disappointing, but if you want to leave, I'm not going to stop you. However, opportunities like this are once in a lifetime, and I can assure you Rani's needs will be taken care of." "Stay," Rani urged. "Remember why we're here. We need new funding. Just make sure the harness is actually sent." Arjun pressed the bridge of his nose, then exhaled. He looked at Rani. "I promise, it'll only be for—" He turned to Cowrie. "However long it takes your staff to get it to the airport, plus flight time to the island on a chartered jet. 18 hours, perhaps 20. Less than a day." "You've made the right decision," Wilson assured him. Cowrie glanced at a note handed to her. "The chair is here. We'll need Mr. Sharma to come with us." Security quickly hustled him down a set of stairs into a service corridor that ran under the pool deck and bar. Harried staff rushed past, carrying trays of food and drinks in one direction and dirty plates and glasses in the other. They turned and followed the dirty plates. Just before the kitchen, they veered off into a side corridor that ended at a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. One of the security guards swiped them in. Then Rani found himself in a room filled with CCTV monitors. As soon as he entered, 2 screens jittered, then filled with static. A wheelchair was in one corner. "Please, sit." The security guard gestured to the chair. Rani eyed it. The chair looked as if it had been designed for a Paralympic race rather than daily use. "I never thought I'd have to be in one of these again," he said to no one, then reluctantly sat. "Now please, if you will, turn your device off," another guard directed. Rani reached up and pressed a hidden button under the cap's band. Panic welled up as his legs became phantom weights, then nothing at all. Static on the 2 faulty monitors cleared, revealing views of the security room. The woman waved the scanner over Rani's head, looked at the results, and appeared satisfied. "I'm sorry about this, but it will need to stay off until you leave the site," she warned. The aide assigned to Rani pushed him back down the service corridor and into a lift, which deposited him on a smaller secondary deck lower on the hill than the infinity pool. Guests milled about, mostly kids with nannies, supervising them as they played in a waiting pool full of inflatable flamingos. Rani's mobile dinged with a text from Arjun. "How are you doing? We're invited to a reception for presenters before dinner on the mezzanine level. Meet you there in an hour. Dress casual." 15 minutes later, the aide maneuvered the wheelchair through the narrow doorway to Rani's suite and deposited him beside the bed. "I'll leave you alone to change. Text me if you need anything," she said, and left. Rani looked around the room. The washroom door was too narrow. His bags, placed on the floor in the wardrobe by the entry, were almost unreachable from a chair. Typical, Rani thought, although he wasn't surprised. He pulled out his phone and texted Arjun. "Has the harness shipped?" It took him several minutes to reply. "Sorry, in the middle of a discussion. I'll ask Corey." "Send me her number," Rani requested, then texted the senior aide. "Has Bengaluru confirmed they've sent the harness?" He was running late by the time the lift door jerked open. Rani wheeled out onto a platform at the back of the mezzanine. Stairs on one side and a ramp on the other led down. He rolled to the ramp, which artfully curved around a glass column filled with exotic tropical fish who swam in circles, ignoring the party beyond their prison wall. It had been several years since he had to negotiate a ramp in a chair, and this one was steep and narrow. Better to ask for help than pitch forward in front of the entire room. He scanned around until he found Arjun on the far side, engaged in a conversation with an elegantly dressed woman and an older man who looked vaguely familiar. A famous angel investor or scientist? He wasn't sure, but he had seen the man's photo in the news feeds. He waved, hoping to get Arjun's attention, then texted. On the platform by the lift. Need help getting down the ramp. He watched as Arjun shot his phone a quick look, waved down a waiter, gestured toward the lifts, and began typing. Rani's phone dinged. Asked staff to help. Meet later by the fountain. By the time help arrived, Arjun had disappeared through a door marked Private with Wilson and the older investor. He texted a question mark. It took 10 minutes to get a reply. Change of plan. Meet me in my room at 8. They've moved my presentation to tomorrow. I'll practice after this meeting. I'd like you to give me pointers like you used to. Rani had fond memories of those sessions. He typed. Okay. But Kari still hasn't confirmed the harness shipped. Can you ask Wilson? Sorry, gotta go. See you at 8. He stared at the message. Maybe Arjun was close to a deal. He'd give him space. He checked the time. It would be morning in Bengaluru. Has anyone from Wilson's staff contacted you about the old wired harness? He didn't recognize the person who had answered the phone, but he could hear her asking around. After a minute, she said, No, not yet, but I still have a lot of messages to check. Should he interfere? Rani wasn't sure if going around Wilson's staff would be a problem for Arjun. They were going to ask you to ship the test harness here. If you don't find a message, can you do it anyway? He asked. We could, but a regular courier would take more than a week. How about direct express? He knew the answer as soon as the words had left his lips. We don't have the budget, he finished. Thanks for checking. Nothing started early at a Wilson retreat. At 10 the next morning, Rani, positioned at the back of the conference room, watched as invited attendees trickled in, sipping cups of exotic Panama geisha coffee. No one was in a rush, and no one was accompanied by their guests. Rani was the only plus one in the room. Several staff had tried to steer him to the pool area until Arjun intervened. He had spent most of last night listening to his friend rehearse a speech he could almost recite himself. It centered on harnessing new technology to return independence to those with severe injuries, innovation born from necessity, and a powerful reminder of their shared purpose. Applause drew his attention as Wilson took the podium. I first heard about this young innovator when an associate showed me a viral video of his work, a young man whose life was irreversibly changed by a tragic accident walking unaided through the crowded streets of Bengaluru. The famous video clip of Rani played on a wall-sized screen. I was immediately fascinated by the tech and its potential applications. I'm confident you will too. As always at my retreats, these morning sessions are not lectures. You are encouraged to ask questions. Now please give me a hand in welcoming Arjun Patel. The audience clapped as Arjun took the mic. He turned and looked at the image of Rani frozen on the screen. The world is not a kind place for people with mobility issues, he began. I witnessed this firsthand growing up in Bengaluru with my friend. We know the story, a man in the front row interrupted. How does the tech work? Are there other applications? Arjun stumbled, then looked down at his notes. We've known for a while that the electric fields in the brain's cortex reflect the information neurons are processing. I found a way to translate the motor control-related activity into signals that bypass the damaged section of Rani's spinal cord. Rani resisted jumping up and yelling, "Don't jump straight to the technical." Hands went up around the room. An assistant hurried a microphone to a woman near the back. "This is accomplished in software?" "Yes," Arjun confirmed. Another woman took the mic. "So the interface could control almost anything." Arjun hesitated. He glanced at Wilson. Wilson leaned forward, suddenly attentive. Arjun checked his notes again, then flipped through a few pages. Rani knew he had skipped the injury case studies, the emotional heart of the presentation, and moved directly to future applications. "I suppose," Arjun began, "it wouldn't be too hard to adapt to other use cases." More hands. "So I could control a suit of armor, like a superhero." A bald man wearing designer data glasses suggested, "And if you can read those fields, you could probably alter them too." In theory, that's possible, but medical applications are at the heart of the system. Arjun tried to steer the conversation back on course. "A few of my friends would pay a lot for faster cognition, direct machine control, sensory enhancement, or telepresencing. Imagine walking on the moon through a robot, or flying." "But that's not," Arjun started to say, but was cut off by a woman. "The potential is huge. I can see a market for defense applications, improved drone control, and more," someone else said. "We're talking about human enhancement," Wilson intervened, "which I believe our group has a moral duty to pursue." Heads nodded in agreement. Rani watched his friend as ideas flew around the room. Each time he attempted to redirect the discussion, his objections were weaker. Eventually he stopped trying. The man who had started the speculation took the microphone. "Innovations in the luxury market always trickle down. Don't limit the platform. Let the premium products pay for research and development. Once production scales and costs drop, accessibility will follow." Wilson got up and stood beside Arjun, smiling. "This is what these events are about, sharing and taking new ideas to the next level. Mr. Patel will lead a small breakout group discussion on mind-machine interaction. Stay if you want, or rejoin your friends and family at the infinity pool for morning activities." Most of the room emptied, leaving Arjun momentarily alone as staff reconfigured it for a more intimate session. Rani took the opportunity to roll over to his friend. "Too bad you didn't get to talk about the work we did together with other accident victims. You skipped the injury case studies. They show the system's impact on lives." Arjun watched Wilson speaking intently with the man who had raised the subject of augmentation. I'm not sure how that would have played here, and besides what? It's why you developed the system. It's the heart of everything. Wilson and the man glanced toward them. They're making some sense, Arjun pointed out. That may be, but which part of the mission statement are you cutting out to make room for their suggestions? I know how it sounds, Rani, but we wouldn't be abandoning medical applications. Profits from luxury products could finance medical development far faster than the clinical market alone. Arjun, he turned toward the voice. It was Wilson. This is Lucas Hoffman. Arjun shook Hoffman's extended hand. He's very interested. You two should talk. Rani felt someone seize the chair's handles and steer him away. I've been asked to take you to the pool area where the other friends and family members are, the aide explained. Rani hadn't seen Arjun in almost 2 days. They had texted, but Arjun's responses were brief, sometimes verging on terse. He imagined his friend rushing between meetings, answering in quick, hurried bursts whenever he could. Was it rude in high-powered circles to respond to a message from a friend? Any news on the harness? Haven't heard anything from Cowrie. Doesn't seem to be a high priority for her, Rani texted. Try asking a different aide, Arjun replied. He had already tried that. The aides hadn't been helpful. Either they knew nothing or couldn't explain why it hadn't arrived. One suggested a problem with customs. I thought Waiheke Island was liberated private land. Doesn't everyone report to Wilson? Rani had asked the stressed aide. The man looked at him as though he had requested the keys to the palace, then shrugged and walked away. No one knows anything, he texted. There was no reply. Frustrated, he started wheeling along a back hall, passing the only accessible washroom in the complex. He decided to take advantage of it. Then, if Arjun hadn't responded, he'd get his interface and turn it on. Maybe that would get someone on Wilson's staff to look for the harness. Rani moved a closed for cleaning sign aside. Inside, the floors were still wet. He selected the cubicle with an extra-wide door, rolled up beside the toilet and started to swing himself off the chair. But with the wet floor and lack of practice, he slipped and fell. The washroom door opened. Rani! Arjun darted forward, fell to his knees, and gently lifted Rani, steadying him upright. It's been 3 days, Rani hissed, his jaw tight with pain. A flush crept into his friend's face. I thought they were handling it. That's convenient. Can you help me back to my room? The washroom door burst open. A guard entered and saw Rani on the floor. Mr. Wilson and his friends are waiting, he explained, once Arjun had helped Rani back into the wheelchair. I need a minute, Arjun complained, looking back at his friend. Are you okay now? The guard touched one ear. Found him in the washroom. A tinny, incomprehensible voice barked a reply. Sir, we have to go. Arjun checked the time. I'll catch up with you at lunch. He turned to the guard. Let's go. See you at lunch, Rani called after him. Bring the harness. He wheeled to the door and was about to leave when his phone chimed. A text from the Bengaluru office appeared on the screen. No one here has been contacted by Wilson's staff. Right, he muttered. Half an hour later, Rani returned to his room and gazed at the cap, with the interface resting on the table beside his bed. He had been warned. Turning it on might, at best, get it confiscated. At worst, it could land him in a holding cell or get him evicted from the retreat. How would it affect Arjun? Would he get kicked out too? Would Arjun be so mad that he'd refuse to maintain the interface after this? To hell with it. No one was helping, so he would take matters into his own hands. Rani placed the cap over his head and activated it. Relief filled him as he regained control of his legs. He stood, packed, then went to the balcony, watching families and friends lounge around the pool, servers rushing to assist. The morning session would be in full swing. Rani wondered if Arjun was there or in one of the rarefied special meetings with Wilson's inner circle. There was a knock. Rani turned away from the balcony, grabbed his bag, then opened the door. 4 security guards, led by the woman from the first day, stood in the hall. None looked happy. Mr. Sharma, you were warned. Turn your device off, the woman demanded as she pushed her way into the room and looked around. I won't turn it off. and I won't give it up. Rani stood on a private pier well away from the hotel, waiting for a charter from the mainland. 2 plainclothes security guards accompanied him, one blocking access to the shore, the other beside him impatiently scanning the horizon. "Can I call my friend?" Rani asked. The guard beside him nodded. The call went to voicemail. Rani hung up and tried again. "Hello." Arjun's voice was harsh and stressed. "Can this wait?" "I'm leaving. Security is throwing me out. I turned the interface back on. The chartered boat will be here in an hour. Meet me if the reason you built the interface still matters." Arjun cursed. "Rani, it's not a good time. I'm reading through a funding agreement." In the background, Wilson was saying, "You need to decide what deserves your attention at this moment." "I have to go." Arjun hung up. Rani stood with his phone in hand. After a few minutes, he put it away, leaned on a stack of crates, and watched the shore. All too soon, the sound of revving engines announced the boat's arrival. Arjun wasn't coming. "Time to go," the guard urged. Rani picked up his bag and walked to the gangplank, listening for his friend to call his name. "We have a schedule to keep." The ship's steward reached for Rani's bag. "Let me help you aboard." He took one more look at the shore. No one was running towards the boat. The steward guided him to a seat on deck. The motors rose in pitch, and the gap between the boat and the pier began to widen. Someone pushed through the crowd along the shoreline. Arjun. He sprinted onto the pier, one hand gripping a tablet. By the time he reached the end, he was bent over, struggling for breath. Rani moved to the rail. Arjun shouted something, but his words were lost in the growl of the engines. He lifted the tablet above his head. Rani could just make out a page title, Medical Access Program. The section had been crossed out in red, with the words Offer Declined scrawled across the page. Arjun pointed at the screen, then at Rani. "Is there a problem?" the steward asked. "No." Rani turned away from the rail and took his seat. Wilson Security had found him the most budget-friendly route imaginable. Auckland to Sydney, Sydney to Hong Kong, then Hong Kong to Bengaluru, 48 hours including stopovers. They had barely paused at departures, flinging his bag to the curb before speeding off. He was sitting in the waiting lounge when Arjun called. He let it go to voicemail. The message icon kept flashing. His finger hovered over delete before he finally decided to listen. "I found the access section in the agreement." Arjun sounded exhausted. They'd moved it out of the development plan into a charitable foundation that they might create later. Might. "I remembered what you said when we arrived, that I'd promised to make the next system affordable for public clinics." There was a pause. Rani stared through the terminal windows at aircraft crawling between the gates and the runway. "I kept telling myself the commercial products would make access affordable, but that wasn't their plan. They might create a nonprofit after recovering their investment, but they didn't commit to it. The nonprofit wouldn't even own the technology it created." Rani called back. Arjun answered on the first ring. "I turned them down." "I heard. Was it because of what I said?" "Because I finally read what I was agreeing to." Rani considered that. "Good. Is that all?" "For now." For months, Rani had avoided Arjun's messages. Eventually, he agreed to one meeting. As he waited, he watched tuk-tuks, people and motorbikes weave through the narrow street below his tiny apartment window. He had heard through the grapevine that Apexi Systems, Arjun's company, had fallen on hard times. It had come close to insolvency, and many of the staff had left. Rani's fan did little more than push hot air around the room. It was only 9 a.m., and he was already wiping beads of sweat from his forehead. There was a knock at the door. Rani ignored it. The second knock was louder, more anxious. He opened the door before Arjun could knock a third time. Arjun stood in the hall, turning his mobile phone over and over in one hand. "Thought you might have changed your mind." Rani stepped back and let him enter. He looked around. "The place hasn't changed much. Still have a roommate?" Rani nodded. "He's at work. What did you want to meet about? Straight to business, huh? Can I at least sit down? Arjun sat at the table beside the window and looked out at the neighborhood. Feels the same, he said, but I'm not here to reminisce. I'm sorry about what happened on the island. I don't regret refusing them. I still think about what the money could have done. Both things are true. Arjun avoided Rani's eyes and looked at old movie posters taped to the brick walls. They had seen most of them together. I hear you trying to rebuild. Is that why you're here? Do you need me, or do you need my story? The company needs users involved in its decisions. I want you back in my life, and I know I haven't earned that. Arjun placed a printed page on the table. It's the proposed new structure. Users would have real authority over development and investment decisions, but that's not the only reason I came. I want to repair what I did to us. Rani rose to get a glass of water from the sink. Arjun got up with him, then frowned. You look a little off balance. For how long? A few weeks, Rani admitted, shifting his weight to compensate. Your right side looks slow. It might be calibration drift. I can adjust it for you. Rani studied him. You're asking? I should have asked every time. Reset it. Arjun unlocked his phone, pulled up the diagnostic app, and tilted the screen so Rani could see the recalibrate command. Rani gave a small nod. With a breath, Arjun pressed the button. Rani tried balancing on one leg, then the other. Thanks. He hesitated. I need more time. I understand. Arjun's shoulders slumped, disappointment flickering across his face. I should go. Rani watched the door close, then returned to the table. Street noise drifted up through the open window, as familiar as the friend who just left. He stared at the proposal, sighed, and began to read. Hi, I'm Vern, the creator of Makeshift Stories. Thanks for listening to Virtue Deprecated. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to ask you a small favor. 3 years ago, our podcast network shuttered its doors. We chose to become independent rather than join another network that would require ads. This allows us to remain ad-free, but we no longer have network support for promotion or discoverability. As a result, Makeshift Stories has become harder to find. You can help by rating the podcast, leaving a quick review, sharing it with friends, or even doing all three. Thank you so much for tuning in and for any support you can give. If you'd like to connect with us, please email makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Makeshift Stories is released in the first week of each month. This month's story was written and read by Vern Hume, aka Alan V. Hare. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Audio production and editing by Vicata Studios. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial, attribution, no derivative license.